All right, it seems like those of us that are here are ready to dig in. We're gonna we're to the part where of this discussion where we're going to talk about progressing down the path of more aggressive peacemaking methods. We're going to look at Matthew 18 here in a minute. So if you want to turn over to Matthew 18, we're going to start there to kind of give us a biblical foundation for what we're thinking about here. But so far, we have talked about how important it is to view conflict as a means of glorifying God. We can serve others in conflict by helping them. We can serve others by just overlooking, by denying ourselves and treating them with kindness in different ways. When there is a disagreement or just a conflict of interest. So we've talked about that quite a bit. We can also serve ourselves in the fact that we can use conflict to help us to see where our struggles are, where our idols are, where our logs are in our own eye. And the way we do that in conflict is by listening, by when we feel like we need to, confronting someone and saying, hey, this happened, or I'm feeling a cold shoulder from you. Is there something that I did or said that was offensive or hurt you in some way? Can you help me? So we can talk through those things and try and work out the conflict. And really the first step in that is for us to talk to each other. So I think we've covered that pretty well. There's always, any time that you study a biblical subject, there's always more meat on the bone that you can dig into. So there are things that we won't cover fully. There are things that will mean more to you in a year or 2 years, and because you'll have a different perspective from life, right? So, so the question today that we're going to kind of get into is what happens if your attempt to work out this conflict doesn't work? Like you tried, you went and talked to this person, and you could not have a meeting of the minds. You could not come to terms on something. What does that look like? So we're going to start at Matthew 18, and we see this progression here. Starting in verse 15, it says, if your brother or sister sins, go and point out their fault just between the two of you. If they listen to you, you have won them over. So that kind of summarizes what I just described is, okay, if something happens, we should try and work it out just between the two of us, right? And the principle that you can maybe derive from that is try and keep the conflict as small of a circle as possible for as long as possible. But then, verse 16 says, but if they will not listen, take one or two others along, so that every matter may be established by the testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. So what does that sound like? Somebody describe what that is teaching us there. What do you hear in those verses?
One person's not putting the wall up, if you will. They don't want to listen.
Right. Someone's not listening, right? Mike?
2 or 3 people are not going to have the same perspective, the same life experiences. They may add something to the situation that one person cannot do.
So adding people to this circle adds different perspectives and understandings, another set of discernment and wisdom, right? Good.
Also, the two may be in conflict with each other, so if there's a true issue, let's say, it could be easy to say, well, you're just saying that because, you know, you're currently at odds with me, right? And it could be easy to dismiss the one you're in conflict with. So if there's a real problem going on, others have recognized this. It's not just what this person's saying. We've seen it too. We also are concerned about this. So it kind of can bring some validity to what's going on by the witness of others.
Good. Good. So other people bring validity into that, right? They can validate or invalidate someone's perspective. If I am picking on Cole about something, and he says, you know, why don't we see if Dawson and Mike will get together and talk through this with us? It might be, we might find out that I'm just being picky. I'm just being ornery with Cole. And really, I'm the one that needed some instruction, right? Good. Yeah, Sam?
I think there's two ideas here. One is that if other people have first-hand information about what happened, it'd be good to have them along to verify that. But if, in the other hand, if you've tried to get along with this person and hasn't been able to do so, sometimes it's good to take somebody with you so that when you meet, that he's going to verify who said what. And because sometimes people say false things about that.
Good. Good. So there's also might be some knowledge of the circumstances, right? Like you might want to bring somebody in and have them confirm something that they might have knowledge of, or at least if this person, if I'm going to Cole constantly and I'm just really harping on him about something, and then he's like, look, you're out of your mind. That's not what's happening here. Then I bring in somebody else. They can kind of weigh that and say, well, I was there. I saw this. This is what happened, whatever. Or add a witness, right? Awesome.
I think the greater value of this is you're taking one or two others that are not knowledgeable of the situation.
Okay.
And they're unbiased individuals.
Okay.
So that every word can be established by either or party. Not, oh, no, I saw it. You need to get this squared away for this brother. Now, I think it can go both ways, but I think the greater value for us is to look at that from the perspective of we need to have somebody unbiased that is looked at as scripturally sound, okay, and has godly values to be there to either guide me or help them or help us both.
Okay, good, yeah. So you brought in kind of another perspective here of this idea of getting someone who is unbiased, who can help both parties weigh the matter, right? So somebody who isn't intimately, like somebody who is not either the offender or the victim in a situation, can come in and just have a lot more clarity and objectivity, right? So somebody that can see clearly. And I will say, Micah says all the time that it's easy to look from the outside and go, man, these two people are just, I know exactly what they need. I can see clearly what the issue there is. But then when I'm one of those people, all of a sudden I can't see where I'm wrong and they're right. I can only see where they're wrong and I'm right. Because in the moment, we're not unbiased. We're biased. We can only see our own perspective. So that idea, I think, is the same idea in 1 Corinthians 6, where it says that the Lord's people should be able to help each other settle matters instead of running to the court and suing somebody. You know, we will be judging angels, how much more things of this life. So if you have disputes about such matters, do you ask for a ruling from those whose way of life is scorned in the church? No. Is it possible that there is nobody among you wise enough to judge a dispute between believers? So there's kind of this strong rebuke of an instruction to say, hey, look, go find somebody that is unbiased, that can help you reason through, that can see from the outside. Yeah.
Just to add to that, I think it's easy for people to feel ganged up against.
Yes.
When you've got your little posse that's ready to go.
Yes. So let me address that. Let me just ask it in a question. Is this saying find a posse to gang up on somebody? Is 1 Corinthians 6 saying find a brother who will help you gang up on another brother? So what's the alternative?
Well, I was just going to comment on that. You know, in other places it talks about the whole idea here was to establish the truth by multiple witnesses, and it really impresses upon me this idea of false witness, because their whole idea behind this was to establish the truth. So if you interrupt that, I remember someone calling a false witness, like, to make it more real in your head, like a professional liar.
Right?
Because their whole job was to establish the truth, and the idea was we're going to work together to find the truth for the situation.
Yes. So you want to try and discern what is true, right?
Well, so that goes to what's the motive going into this, right?
Yes.
So that's, you know, Jesse's speaking about the motive there was to establish the truth, right? But if our motive is, look, I'm not trying to be right with God, I'm just trying to be more right than you in this argument.
Right.
Nicole, nobody ever thinks that's their motive.
But it is their motive
Well,
sometimes, right?
Nobody ever acknowledges the truth to themselves, even though you know it. Deep down, you know it. It's whether you choose to acknowledge it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so I think a good practice is when there is a conflict and you've gone and you've tried to work it out between yourself and somebody else, and you really do feel you're the one that's in the right, then surely anybody can come in and validate your perspective, right? So a really good practice is when you feel like somebody else is needed, let the other person choose who comes in and helps. So if Cole and I are disagreeing about something, I'm going to say, hey, Cole, I think it'd be helpful to have somebody else kind of help us weigh these items. Who do you trust? Not,
Oh.
I've asked my dad to come.
She'll tell you.
I said someone unbiased. So yeah, but I mean that's good. Like, who do you trust? Put it on, like, let the other person bring someone into the conversation that you think will be objective. Let them decide that.
So this idea of ganging up.
Yeah.
That was brought up. Remember, the last part of verse 15 says, you have gained your brother. Anytime that you're ganged up on, what generally happens? The wall gets stronger and taller.
Yep.
I'm not going to give in.
And you get more defensive and more desperate.
That's just human nature. So that you need to follow this and understand the purpose of these people going with you. And I like in the book the way they describe the fact that, hey, since we can't get to the bottom of this, how about you bring someone that you trust that doesn't know anything about this, and I'm not gonna tell the person I'm gonna ask.
Right.
Would you be okay with, I ask this person, who would you like to ask? And come together, that way making it an unbiased situation to establish the facts and the truth of the matter.
Well,
Yep.
one thing that establishes too, like, because you're saying, oh, let them pick, right? So it's like studies have shown, like, I know, talking about this in like the safety realm, like in burn victims, when they had control of the morphine that they could get when they were getting their treatments, they were less likely to use it because they felt an element of, I'm in control, or I have some say over this matter. So then you just go, well, this is picked for me, this was chosen for me. You feel like, I don't have any say, I'm helpless in this, this is not gonna work out in my favor. And again, the walls just go up and you just go, no, I don't have any interest in this, right? But if you are allowed to have buy-in, oh, I guess I can, then you're just much more apt to feel like, okay, well, I can actually be a part of this outcome rather than it just me sitting here, and it just be told to me and I'm gonna have no control over it whatsoever. So you're actually affording them an opportunity to be a part of it.
Right.
Rather than, I'm just gonna tell you what's happening.
Yeah.
Brad, I think too many times we want to jump to the end.
Right, yeah.
Treat them as a heathen or a backslider.
We haven't even gotten there.
Yeah, we haven't even got there. There's no reason to get there. But that's the goal we have in mind if we have something against our brother.
Mhm.
He's not gonna listen to me, so we're gonna get him to the point we're gonna part ways.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then there's a whole nother thought process of how you treat a heathen or a backslider.
Right. True. And we'll get there. But think about the motivation of that mentality of, you know what? I know this guy is not going to listen to anybody. He's never listened to anybody. So we just need to just go ahead and I don't mind for other people to get involved and I'll talk to him or whatever. But I know he just needs to be written off. Like I'm ready to write this guy off. And I think everybody else should be too. And so that to me is the motivation of that mentality where it would be really convenient for me to have biblical justification to never talk to that guy again.
So that all comes back to me rather than glorifying.
Right, exactly. And remember, go just between the two of you, and if they listen, you have won them over. The goal here then is to win them over to the Lord, right? So if that's our goal.
And that's a heart check for us. If
Yes.
that is not, if I can truly sit back and say in my heart, I don't really want them won over, I want to write them off, I'm not the one to go talk.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
I need to sit in prayer for a while.
Yep. I want to write them off. I want to be vindicated. I want to feel good. I want to be validated in my rightness, my righteousness, right? I was the one right here, and I want to be validated in that. I want the emotional security and well-being that comes with being validated for being right.
Right.
Yeah.
Your version said win them over.
Mm-hmm.
You have won them over. I'd like to hear some other versions.
Yeah.
New King James says, you have gained your brother. That doesn't decide which way it went. That means you now are brethren again, no matter who was at fault.
Right. Yeah.
So I'd like to hear some of the other versions is how that lays out, because winning them over says, I'm winning.
Right.
I'm winning, not the
Gotcha.
Lord, I'm
Okay.
winning.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Anybody else have anything different for that verse? If they will not, if they listen to you, you have what? Everybody has
Last phrase of verse 15.
English Standard is gained.
gained,
Won that person back.
won the person back. Yeah.
New Americans won.
Yeah.
One
So
the brother or one the more?
Won your brother.
Yeah, so that's different also.
Right.
Concept.
Yeah.
NET says regained, I think is. kind
You've
of-
regained,
right.
yeah, your brother, yep. Right.
Well, I just think about like what the kids are studying right now, and it's like these lessons that we go through with them. You know, they've been going through the parables of, you know, the prodigal son and the lost coin and the lost sheep. And we're just sitting down stressing the importance of rejoicing when one turns from sin, when, you know, your brother repents, rejoice, you know, we explain, you know, the prodigal son sinned against heaven and his father, like we're to have sorrow when we sin against God, and that all trickles down, right? And so we impress these things that God has taught us to the kids of how this is so important, right? And this is what you should do. And then we as adults go, well, you need to get that, but I can just forget it when I get into a situation like this. So it's like, if you just strip it down to like the most basic principles that a child can understand, and if we just looked at it like that, well, this is actually what God wants of me. And if I just focus on that, you know, this will help drive my heart through this situation. It is about rejoicing because you're right with God, not because you're right in the argument, right?
Right, yeah.
There's heavenly consequences on the line when something like this is going on, and that should be our focus.
Yes, yeah. We tend to be self-centered. We tend to center our thoughts on ourselves. And even in this regard, especially in this regard, we think, how can I protect myself? How can I vindicate myself? How can I kind of have some revenge for this person hurting me or whatever? It makes me feel more self-righteous. I feel better when I see how bad this guy's doing, like he totally failed, and so I feel pretty good because I didn't totally fail.
The Greek for that, you have won, is the word ekrdesis, and it does mean to gain or win over. But I was just thinking, like, this verse does assume sin. So we're kind of broadening it
Yes.
a little bit, but it does say if your brother sins.
Yes, good point, yeah. Which, I think he makes the point in here that it doesn't, a conflict doesn't always mean sin, but usually when you feel like you can't work matters out, there is some sin involved somewhere. Maybe not in the actual offense, but now in the arrogance that is present on not being willing to listen to your brother, right? So even in that, there's an opportunity to humble yourself and to see some of your character flaws and address them and turn from them. Okay, so what did you underline in the chapter? What did you highlight that stood out to you in this context?
On page 190, when it talked about what to share, the unnecessary details,
Yes.
we can get derailed so easily when we think it's details, but it's our feelings, it's our desires. And that just, I really thought about myself. I thought about dealing with my kids, that when they're telling a story or complaining about each other, and I'm like, wait, get back to the point.
Yeah.
And they're not understanding what I'm saying, but this is what I mean. I just want to know what actually happened. I get you had the feelings, I love when they say, well, what I meant, what actually happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I love the unnecessary details, we've got to set those
Yeah.
aside, and sometimes we need a lot of help with that.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and we tend to get historical on people and bring up not just what they did this time, but well, you always do this, or you never do this, or this is, you did this last week and the week before, and you did this, And we want to get historical in the moment because that helps us prove our case in this instant and helps us not win over our brother, but win over our brother.
Well, so with that though, sometimes it's how you use that information, right?
Yes.
Like obtaining that ledger may be to go, hey, before I address this, I really need to make sure that there's an established pattern and that I'm not looking at this, in the wrong way. Because I don't want to just too quickly go, whoa, 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 right? And then point this finger. But then again, did you weaponize that and use it to destroy rather than to go, to use it in a helpful way?
Good, yep.
It's really kind of a continuation of what Cole just said at the top of page 187. Before you consider involving others in conflicts, wise to review the steps that you can take. A couple things that does, is it a minor conflict? Is it really worth going through there? And if you're doing it at a different time, you're taking the emotion out of it, that you may not be as upset as when it first happened. And whether you're writing it down, whether you're saying it out loud, you can hear yourselves like, wow, that's not as bad as what I thought it was when I had the emotion involved with it.
Right, yeah. Yeah, I tend to think when, we remember when we talked about, we categorized conflicts into two different buckets. We said that there are personal matters and then there's material matters. So there's the personal stuff where you lied to me, or you said this, or you treated me harshly, or whatever it is, you broke your promise to me. So those are all things that are personal. Then they're and emotional. Then there's the things where like you broke my fill in the blank, right? Or you ran into my car in the parking lot. So I know you didn't mean to do that. There might not be any personal aspect of that, but now we got to ask the question, who's bearing the cost of fixing the car? Is that on me? I was parked and you backed into me. How can we resolve this? So if you're like, well, look, it was a parking lot, I didn't mean to, I guess just like file an insurance claim or whatever. Okay, well, maybe we need to see if that's the best thing we can do. So when it's a personal matter, it seems to me that those things is really hard to get into an argument of he said, she said, and that's all that we're talking about. If there's no material portion of this, it's just what you did hurt me. For me bringing in Dawson, well, I just want you here because this person did this or said this, and it just really hurt my feelings. Okay, did you say that? No, I don't think I said that. Well, at some point you have to just take those personal matters and overlook and go, we tried to work it out. Now I need to realize I have been forgiven much more than this. I need to just let that go and be reconciled to my brother or sister. Now, if there is a material matter and like we got to decide who's bearing the cost of this, then it's, I think, more applicable to bring in other people to help you solve that in a just and fair way. Yeah.
This chapter it took me a little while to get through. It was a little triggering. Especially when it talks about the different churches getting involved, the different people getting involved. It's scary. That's a lot of trust we are putting in human beings. And so I did some praying and thinking on it, and Aaron had some great work things happening that we were able to talk through the book and use. So in moving forward with the Peacemaker book, one of the things I need to work on is accepting that the past is the past. So that if I go to somebody that I need to give them the opportunity. People in my past may have made a mess of this.
Right.
If I carry that baggage forward, I can have all the intention in the world of wanting to work through something. But if I'm not coming in with that humility and trust, then it doesn't matter how many of these people I bring in, I'm not gonna be able to move forward because I'm still hanging on to that baggage.
Right.
So sometimes, if we're working through a conflict and we want help, we have to make sure we're ready to actually work with that help.
Right.
And sometimes the letting go may not be dealing with the conflict you're in right now. So, just something I thought of.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. Some friends of ours had just a completely personal conflict that was very traumatic in the way that while they were dating, one of the parents just was completely against the relationship and made up all kinds of concerns. And that really hurt the relationship. It hurt this person. And then they ended up getting married anyway. And so then now there's this, now how do you move forward with a mother-in-law that you know was 1,000% against your relationship and probably still is to this day? Like how do you deal with that? There's no material thing like, hey, maybe like, where are we going to spend Thanksgiving? Or are you going to come to the wedding? Maybe that is the most material thing that you can think of. But even there, it's mostly personal, right? So what do you do now? And do you just like, this person doesn't want to move on without acknowledging like, okay, it's really convenient for me just to decide I'm going to overlook all these terrible things you've done and said to me. And then what am I going to do? Bring somebody in to say, well, they did this and they did this and they did this and this is what happened and this made me feel terrible. I couldn't sleep for a week because I just felt like, is this true? I don't think this is true. You know, all of the baggage, right? All the emotional baggage that went on for years of treatment. How do you, this person is struggling to move forward because how do I move on from that? How do I just interact with this person as if nothing ever happened when all I can think about with them is what all the things that they've done? Like how do I ignore that? How do I overlook that, right? And so I think that's where you say, I've got to take this to the Lord. The book, The Hiding Place by Corrie ten Boom, after she is rescued from a concentration camp, she survived and she is now preaching the gospel because the gospel is the only thing that got her through that. And the SS guard that treated her so harshly comes to one of the worship services and wants to shake her hand. Do you guys remember this in the book? And she looked at him and thought, how could I ever treat this man with kindness? How do I forgive all the things that he did to hurt me and hurt the people around me? The terrible things he did as a guard in a concentration camp. And she said a silent prayer to God to help with forgiveness. And she said, along with the command to forgive, God gave her the strength to forgive. And she felt like all of a sudden, her hand started moving toward his to shake his hand. She didn't really realize why it was happening, but God gave her the strength to do that. And so sometimes you have to just not forget, but you have to act forgiving, right? And we'll talk about what it means to forgive, but there is so much emotional baggage that comes with issues that you go, man, how do we even start working that out, right? How do we even, what does that look like? And so you have to channel the grace that you've been shown. And again, give it to the Lord. I don't know, other thoughts?
I think one of the challenges we have in these realms is we can equate ourselves with the perfect God who's willing to forgive us. He's not wrong. He hasn't accused us of something we're not guilty of,
Right.
right? But in our relationships one with another, we're both fallible, so we can have that, so that same relationship can't be there. I shouldn't say it can't be there. It's harder to be there because the infallible part of the other party and yourself, both. Because I can forgive, that doesn't mean that person's going to forgive.
Right.
And so we try to work that out. Where with God, it's a given. He's going to forgive us. That's what he's all about. We're to be that way, but when we're talking about man, that doesn't necessarily correlate with another person.
Right. Yep.
That's probably one of the strange or harder things for us to grasp.
Yes.
Deal with.
Yes.
That we still have to do our side.
Yes. Right, yeah. And you think about Jesus still did his side for people who completely reject him to this day and will go to the grave rejecting the Messiah. Jesus died for them too. It's just that they didn't accept the gift, right? But Jesus still did his part for them.
Not to negate, like, I don't want to diminish God's power in saying this, because through him this could happen in the snap of a finger. It's maybe less likely that we've seen this in instances, because it's like, let's just think like, oh man, I need to go on a diet and lose weight. Well, I just spent the last 10 years eating like a slob, and I expect that I'm gonna be slimmed down in 2 weeks.
Right.
Okay,
Are you
so
telling me that's not what happens?
I think
Don't
it does.
crush my spirit here.
I think it does. See, my goal is I don't lose weight, I just get other people to gain more. But you know what I'm saying? It's like we have to have realistic expectations, like especially like years of treatment a certain way. That's not just change in a day, and that's where I'm saying like, if that was the will of God, then it would. I don't want to diminish his power in our lives and the Holy
Right.
Spirit, right? But we do see a lot of examples where, you know, the Rome wasn't built in a day kind of, you know, slogans that are out there. If it was many years of this, I'm going to be wrestling if my mindset is, well, this can be fixed tomorrow. So we have to have realistic expectations when we enter into something, because making things change takes time, right? And it's more than just, at something like that's more than just one action to be corrected, right? That's mindsets, that's heart conditions and things that normally take some time to get resolved. And so I think, you know, that's just one thing, like let's go in with a perspective of this may take a little while. Don't lose sight of that. Don't let that get you so down that you don't even try, right? But we do need to think about these things with realistic expectations, or we will be set up for failure in what, you know, in our minds.
Right, yeah. It reminds me of the principle, if you haven't read the book Atomic Habits, it's a really, really good book. But the idea of an ice cube, trying to melt an ice cube, if a room is 25 degrees and I'm trying to melt the ice in this room, then I can work really hard and get it from 25 to 26 degrees in the room. From 26 to 27, maybe I can get it all the way up to 30 degrees in the room. And I've done a lot of work to get there, but nothing has changed about the ice. But then once I hit 32, 33 degrees, then I start to see the effects of that, right? So you can't know what the Spirit is doing to the heart of that person 1 degree at a time. And you may not see any ice melting at all, but that person might be softening inside. And then one day I think you will see, if God grants it, a complete change. And it looks like it's a complete change in a moment. But really what was happening is 1 degree at a time, God was softening their heart as they were being faithful in other things or hearing God's word. And then one day it dawns on them, oh, I totally messed this up with this person. And that's on me. There are things I did that caused and contributed to that conflict. So, Philippians 4, you had a comment real quick. Philippians 4, we've read this a couple times in the context of conflict. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord, right? So he's saying, hey, you guys need to agree. You need to get along. But then listen to verse 3. Yes, and I ask you, my true companion, help these women since they've contended at my side in the cause of the gospel. Wait, he's asking for help for these women, right? Have you ever noticed there's a mediator right there? There's an appeal for a third person, maybe an unbiased third person to come in and help these women get along. What were you going to say?
Comment on Corey Ten Boom just reminded me of the power of literature.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I feel really strongly about that anyway, but just the power of story when we need a bigger picture and a bigger perspective, because like when you feel so lost in your conflict, go read the story of Joseph or the story of David and Saul. Like you have never and will never experience the injustice that someone like Joseph experienced. And you get to read his life in a sped up version and see, like this took place over years, to go with Cole's comment. Like this is not going to resolve itself overnight. And so it gives you patience and endurance and also puts your life in perspective. You read the story of Louise Zamperini and
Unbroken, yeah.
And you're like, wow, I have no problems.
Yeah.
And so read a biography or a story in the Bible of conflict.
Yeah.
It really puts your life in
Yeah.
perspective.
When you read the story of someone who's lost at sea for 80 days or whatever it was, and trying to catch sharks and dig out their livers to eat them, then you go, you know what? I'm not doing too bad, right? Yeah, Jesse?
Yeah, all of those, and what like I said, kind of reminds me of something that I'm not really good at, and it's the discipline of kind of sometimes having to disconnect your behavior from how you feel. And I do think that that's a spiritual concept. I think about Jesus saying, Father, forgive them, while probably in excruciating pain. There was a purposeful disconnection of what is godly, what is good, what is right, and what your body and your mind is telling you at that moment. I'm not
Yes.
good at that.
Right.
And I think that that's really, really difficult. And so, but I do see that as a lesson, maybe in discipline itself, just trying to, if you are angry, but I can't forget what the SS soldier did to me, but I'm gonna raise my hand anyway, and
Right.
probably may not fully ever forget or release the pain and the suffering, but disconnecting that for the sake of goodness and forgiveness.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right. So on Wednesday, we'll take the next step and kind of go even further toward invasiveness in what do you do when even 2 or 3 people can't get to somebody? What does it mean to treat someone as an unbeliever? We'll talk about that on Wednesday. And then I just remembered I'm holding us all accountable. A week from Wednesday, we're gonna be out of town. There was some discussion on the side, I think, of what was gonna happen next Wednesday. Do we know yet what's happening next Wednesday? Okay, so we're gonna be out of town, so happy to share what we need to cover on the Peacemaker, but yeah, probably need to think about that.